Today, we're going to talk about the value of talking about grief. It's so important for those who are grieving that there is an open conversation around grief and loss and memories and discussion. Yet, we also know that our society seems to be more grief adverse, and it's really not a topic people want to talk about, right?
hmm I think that there are a lot of reasons why we don't talk about grief. As a griever, you don't want to feel like you're a burden to other people. And so, because we're not talking about it, you're not, asking for help when you need it. And I think that, too, there's this power in resiliency, and it's what we strive for as adults and what we want to pass on to our children. But I think there's this idea that to be resilient you have to be strong, and everybody who's strong is not necessarily feeling everything and being vulnerable. And I think that if we shifted that focus, that resiliency is more vulnerability and being able to ask for help, that might open up that door to some of that conversation.
Yeah, you bring a really good reflection on strong. Like, what is strong? I think some people just think you got to be strong and, like, you know, push your way through it and do whatever you can to get to the other side of grief, which might be, just wake up and start going and ignoring the grief, and I can push my way through it that way. Or just, you know, getting to the other side without actually walking any part of that real journey. And that's where kind of the challenge gets. If we ignore it, it doesn't go away. And the hard part of grief is that the way to heal through that grief is to experience it and to walk through those motions and recognize that they are real and important to process, and that they're going to be there, and you got to do the work of grief. So your reflection on the idea of strong and resilient is really fascinating, because strong can certainly be interpreted to mean strength, and I'm not going to be hurt or sorrowful or scared or vulnerable. I'm going to be strong. But in
Yeah, and
grief, it's really opposite.
I think that that strength and that resiliency really comes in sitting with that grief and being able almost to share it with others, being able to actually talk about it. So why do we why should we talk about grief?
And as we see in the kids at Sandcastles, being able to talk about grief and having that safe place to do it is what brings the healing. So I guess that would be the answer to the why, right? Why should we do that? It's because that's how we heal, right? That mourning, that shared experience of grief, that ability to walk through the depths of the difficult feelings, is what gets you to the other side. It's what helps the healing and the hope to come back again.
And when you confront those feelings and you're able to, as you said, walk through them, I think that it gives you that power and learning to cope with it. And that coping ends up making you more resilient anyway and more strong, because you're learning healthy ways to deal with those emotions that are going to promote healthy development throughout your entire life.
Right. So we're really redefining strong. Yeah. Strong is taking the challenge ahead, even when it's hard, and even when it means you have to walk through painful feelings, um, and use that resiliency to find the ways to cope. There's that meme out there about grief, where the grief is the ball in the jar, and then initially the ball is really big and the jar is really small. But as you walk on that journey and you do the work of grief, you feel the feelings, the jar gets bigger, and even if that grief ball remains the same. So that's part of the healing of it, is we have more space around it, and as you take each step on that journey, it gets a little easier as you have more coping and more strength and more resiliency.